chapter back in 2013 and led our first bridge build in Comitán, Panama in 2014. Graduated in 2015 with my bachelor's and master's, and then moved down to Washington, D.C., which is where I'm currently at. I work as a structural engineer for Thornton Tomasetti, so I design buildings and major renovations of buildings in the Washington, D.C. metro area.
Well, you're right in the middle of the action then right now.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's an interesting city around these times.
I'm sure that's true. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Daryn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name's Daryn Hobbs. I am a structural engineer. I'm currently working in New Zealand, but my background is that I went to school at the University of Colorado Boulder, did my bachelor's and my master's degrees there. That's when I started to get involved with EIA, which was Bridges to Prosperity at the time. And since then, since practicing for about 7 years, I've been able to kind of balance professional work as well as helping out with these bridge projects. So I worked on some projects down in Bolivia and Panama, and then recently helped out with some projects in Eswatini. And so I worked for a company called HDRs for about 7 years and got a chance to work on some really cool projects. My specialty is bridges. So my most recent project was the LAX People Mover project, guideway system for a new train that's being installed there. That project's under construction right now, super exciting. And my wife and I recently relocated to New Zealand, which is basically COVID-free right now, which is kind of nice. And it just started up last month, working as a structural engineer, still doing bridges down here.
Wow, what time is it?
It is 11 a.m. in the future.
In the future. Wow. Well, thank you for joining us in the future. Thank you for being with us in the present.
Absolutely.
Leila, do you want to introduce yourself? You have an interesting background there. Perhaps you'll tell us where you are.
Yes, thank you, Julie, and hi, everybody. So I'm so excited to be here today for this hour of happy. Just to introduce myself quickly, my name is Leila Sory. I come from Burkina Faso. It's a very small country in Western Africa. And I decided to come to Montreal in Canada to study at McGill University. I'm currently still studying, finishing my bachelor's degree. I'm also specializing in structural engineering like Jen and Daryn did, and so interested in bridges. So in 2018, I discovered EIA and I decided to start a chapter as well at my university. So we started actually the first chapter in the province of Quebec here in Canada. So it was an interesting process. And in 2019, we had a shadow project that we completed with the University of Colorado Boulder. And that's where we finished this beautiful bridge that you can see behind me. So it's a bridge that is serving a community in Matangeni in Eswatini. So it's the ex-Swaziland. And that was the best experience. I've been involved with EIA so far. I'm still finishing my undergraduate degree. I will graduate next year, and I'm planning on continuing my master's research and graduate studies. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm excited to start this conversation with all of you.
Yes, well, thank you so much for being with us. So, Vinnie, we got experts here for you. Folks who've done a lot of interesting things and have launched themselves into their engineering careers. Let me introduce Vinnie. This is Vinnie Smith. He's a senior at St. Charles East High School in Illinois. So, welcome. Vinnie is a high school senior. College application season is here. He's interested in engineering. I know you're applying to a couple of places, which you can tell us about. And you're kind of thinking about mechanical engineering, general engineering at this point. Yeah. Vinnie is involved in a lot of things. He's been 4-H, he's been an ambassador for his 4-H group, he's in the National Honor Society, a lacrosse player, does a lot of things and is involved in the engineering program at his school. So Vinnie, tell us before we get started where you're thinking of going to school, and then we'll let you get into our panel here and you know, help us kind of illuminate the way.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So as Julie announced, I'm Vinnie Smith, and currently I am finishing up applications as the famous November 1st deadline approaches. I'm currently looking at schools such as Virginia Tech, University of Dayton, Ohio, and Georgia Tech. And with those schools, I will be applying as a mechanical engineer. But schools such as Virginia Tech and Purdue, I know, they have a general engineering program, which I'm also interested. Might change my mind. We'll just kind of see what happens with that. And as you said, I am in a lot of engineering programs through my school. We're lucky to have that here in St. Charles. And yes, it'll be a lot of fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, I think we're set up for a really great discussion here. For our viewing audience, Engineers in Action, as I said earlier, we do build the infrastructure that the world needs to thrive. But we also have the privilege of being a part of the development of many, the careers and the lives of many young engineers as they're working their way through their college experience, as you've heard during those introductions. And this is an important role that we play. We feel that we are helping develop the next generation of America's engineering corps here at Engineers in Action. And that means we have an incredible brain trust of people who are working in doing very interesting things around the world, obviously. So that brings us to Vinnie, and you know, really helping people, especially young people and parents who are thinking about a career in engineering, and what that might mean, and how to make sense of all that. So Vinnie, you have some questions you want to kick us off with here?
Yeah, of course. So I have been lucky enough to know that I've wanted to be an engineer for a little while, but one of the biggest, I guess, hurdles you could call is to decide what field of engineering to go into. So I'm asking you guys, what made you want to choose your specific field? I know you guys said structural and civil. So kind of like what brought you to those sides? I know I had trouble with it, and I'm guessing a lot of my friends who I know who are going into engineering have also seen a challenge in that as well.
All right, who wants to tackle that?
I can go first. So I was really lucky to participate in the ACE mentor program when I was in 11th and 12th grade. So ACE stands for Architecture, Construction, and Engineering, for anyone who hasn't heard. And through that program, I was able to learn about the different types of engineering and architecture, and a bit about construction as well, because I knew nothing. I had no clue what an architect was, what an engineer was. And during one of those sessions in 11th grade, a structural engineer came in, and he led a bridge building activity, you know, out of paper with pennies, and then spoke more about what he did. And I remember just being captivated, and I was like, that's it, like that's what I want to do. And I knew I liked physics. I knew I liked seeing things come to life. And you know, you can see the structure, like it's a big part of a bridge or a building. And so I decided to major in civil engineering with a focus in structures. Speaking of Virginia Tech, I also applied there. That was my #1 for the longest time, until I switched last minute to Penn State, just after I found out about their Women in Engineering program. But yeah, great school, and all of the ones on your list are great. And yeah, for me though, there was a lot of, once I got to Penn State, I learned a lot, and everything just kept being fun and kept reinforcing my interests. So I just continued on that path of pursuing civil engineering with a focus in structures. And I've been loving it ever since.
Great. Daryn or Leila, you want to talk about how you got where you made your decision about where you were going to specialize?
Yeah, I can touch on that. At my university, I started off kind of between aerospace engineering, mechanical engineering, and civil engineering. So I had a lot going on in my head at the time. So I was open option, just kind of swimming around and surfing around and kind of learning about what those disciplines meant. What would it actually mean to be working in those disciplines? I was really interested in cars, really interested in the sort of the aeronautics program at CU, and then also interested in bridges. But what really helped me nail it down was first having like a growth mindset and continuing to learn about the disciplines throughout my really first and second year of college. And then second, I took a general engineering open option course. It was sort of extracurricular, 1 credit course, pretty easy course, but the instructors really focused on exposing what all the different disciplines of engineering to the students. And that really helped me settle in. So I would say constantly getting exposure to the different disciplines and learning and knowing that it's okay to change. You know, like if you decide to go down a path with mechanical and then you get into junior year, because typically freshman, sophomore year, a lot of the courses will transfer. Be knowledgeable about that, of course. But if you need to change, you know, think long and hard about it, but it's not the end of the world if you change disciplines. Even if you're in your career, I've seen folks who become a professional engineer, 5 to 10 years of experience in one field, and then they decide, well, I'd like to learn more about this field and kind of pivot. And I think that's perfectly acceptable. You know, I think just having a growth mindset throughout that and having the ability to continue learning over time is really important.
And I can also give my my own experience about how I got to choose civil engineering. So I grew up always dreaming about becoming an architect. So that was actually what I wanted to become when I grew up. And I wanted to draw, I wanted to create designs, to build things. And I grew up in Burkina Faso, as I told you in the beginning. So in my school, there is like a program where you can do 1 week where you intern into like an agency or anywhere you want. So you go for a small internship, and I got the chance to go to this architecture place. And I learned a lot there, but at the same time, I learned more about going to the field, talking with engineers and construction people. And then I was like, oh, maybe this is also very interesting. So I started to make more research about this aspect, because I didn't just want to do a conceptual design to just work like drawing and things like that. I also wanted to go to the field and to be part of the construction team. So that's how I got more interested into civil engineering. And I made a lot of research because I wanted to study at McGill University. So I made a lot of research on the different programs that they had in their engineering department, the different departments. And that's how I ended up choosing this one. I did apply for architecture as well, just to, you know, I would say have different options. Since it's just your first year, you can apply to different programs. You can see which one you will get in, and at the end, it'll be just your choice. It'll be up to you. So you get the chance to think more. At least you know that you applied, and you know that you can get in, and then you'll choose. And I guess that you get to choose when you have an experience in the field, like when you really experience what it really is, because it's good to read more about it or to watch videos or movies, but as long as you don't work or you don't talk to someone who has this experience, it's difficult to make your own mind. So I would say try to maybe meet with people that are in different fields of engineering and try to see what they're doing in their day-to-day job, to see if that fits your interest and your skills as well.
Yeah, I think that's really cool that you guys all talked about kind of just exposure and things like that. I also heard a bit of a common theme with you guys talking about kind of hands-on experiences. You all like to, you know, go and touch and actually bring these things to life. So kind of a follow-up question for that is, would you guys have any recommendations for like almost having some interest or some initial knowing of kind of physical skills of building and things like that? Would you guys recommend that, or do you think that your college education really brought that to life and you really kind of were put in the right path to start out with?
Do you mean like when you say physical skills? Do you mean like actually you know, building and kind of doing the welding or the construction of the work?
Yeah, just kind of having a general know-how of how things are made, how to really just kind of the basics of building and hands-on learning.
Yeah, I can jump in if that's all right. I would definitely encourage that. Like getting involved in a lab at your university is a really good way, based on my experience, to get that experience and to build up those skills. Because oftentimes, like in my day-to-day, for example, now I don't get out in the field as much as I would like, and having that knowledge of, for me, when I'm designing a concrete structure, what does it mean to bend a piece of rebar that's, you know, 1 inch in diameter? What does that take? Can we even do that? What does it mean to weld upside down? You know, when I'm calling out a steel connection detail, what does it mean for somebody to go out there and do that? And learning those things firsthand, I think, is really invaluable. And a good way to do that is like being part of a lab. I did a steel bridge team, which was a ASCE, American Society of Civil Engineers project as a competition, which makes it pretty fun. So learned how to weld and work with steel through that. And I still wish I did more at university, because it's like really cheap or free access to amazing tools and like the best technology ever. So I would definitely encourage that.
I totally agree with all of that. I joined the steel bridge team my freshman year because I wanted to learn how to weld. It was just something I was interested in, and my steel-toed boots that I bought before my first year of college, I just wore out on a job site last week. So, you stick with it. And I would say, in addition to like any hands-on activities you can get on campus, the more exposure you can get to construction or whatever, you know, your industry's equivalent of during internships and things, that's really helpful. I was fortunate enough that I was able to get a lot of internships in structural engineering in both buildings and bridges to kind of get a sense of what I was interested in. But I know a lot of people after their first year, most of the like big general contractors are more willing to take interns at a younger age. And I think it's a great experience to be able to get on site. You know, some construction internships might not always be the most glamorous. You might be the person who's required to take the site photos every week and organize the meeting minutes and things. But I do think it's really valuable, and I have a lot of friends in construction, and I just love like hearing from them and talking to them. But then nothing replaces, after you design something, seeing it built. The lessons learned there are so key. And I don't know, my boss always said that it's very hard to know how good you are as an engineer if none of your work gets built. So I'm thankful that all the projects I've designed have gone into construction, and that's when you really know, does this work? Is this constructible? How much does this cost? So the more just knowledge and exposure you can gain earlier for that, the better. It'll set you up very well.
And I can jump in here just to say that, as Jen said, I think that internships that you do during your undergrads are very beneficial on your path to, at the same time, confirm that oh, that's what I want, or that's not what that's what I don't really like in the part of the job, so that you know exactly what you want to do when you graduate. Because when you start to work, you have more responsibilities, you know. So like when you're an intern, you get to work and to learn a lot. So I had an opportunity to have an 8-month internship last year, actually. And I was part of a team where I could do different tasks. So they would put me on different projects. I could learn on different things. And you are also very close to mentors and supervisors. So you can directly ask them questions. You can ask any questions. That's the good thing about this. So because they're really understanding and they're there to help you grow and to learn. So doing internships is a great opportunity, but you also can get involved as much as possible in different activities like you're already doing at university. There's so many things out there, so many great clubs, so many great things. I was also part of a design building team for bridges, but it was wood bridges, not steel. And I think that you learn a lot because you work also with other students. So it's kind of like a design on your own. So you get to do it from the beginning to the end. Then you can go to competitions, you can win if you're lucky. So I would really encourage you to get out of there, to try different things, to get those skills. And there's a lot of things, resources that can help you in this path. Also good, like there's not just physical, there's also like personal soft skills that you can also develop, communication skills that are very important. So you can attend a lot of workshops or different things like that, that you can really hone and really learn to develop during your undergrad.
That's awesome to hear that you guys all kind of found these similar activities and internships and opportunities. So to segue from that almost, when you were choosing your universities, I'm asking if there are any specific programs you guys kind of looked for. Jen, I know you said I believe you said it was like women in engineering. So there are a lot of programs to get involved with and kind of get your feet in and see your field in action. So would you recommend, when searching in colleges, kind of looking for those opportunities, making sure those are available to you? Or do you think more of the other educational side of things is more important?
I would say all of the above. You know, for me, how I chose was I knew I wanted a big university. I thought that would come with a lot of different opportunities and different programs to get involved in. And then, of course, got to Penn State, and they didn't have Engineers in Action Bridge Program. So guess what? Penn State got a new club then. So, you know, never, I would say, be afraid if a university doesn't have something after you get there, because there's always opportunities to get things started. But for me, yes, it was a big university, something within driving distance of Pennsylvania. Those were kind of my criteria. And I know Virginia Tech has a really large lab space, and like all their clubs have the different offices. And I remember touring and being really impressed with that. And then I learned a little bit more about Penn State, and they do have a really strong women in engineering program, and that was something that was important to me, with a smaller percentage of women in the industry. And I know a lot of universities have Society of Women Engineers and other great programs, so you really can't go wrong. But for me, that was just enough to tip the scale and decide to go to Penn State. But yeah, I looked for, a good civil engineering program and then a big university, so I knew I would have those opportunities.
So in my case, I also had the chance to make a tour of the campus of McGill that I wanted to join. I had the chance to go there and to see a little bit how it was going, and to see other students and to learn more about the different activities, the different programs. the like outside of the classroom activities that are going on, or social activities that are also very important, because you want to make sure that the culture of the university and the community that is there also aligns with your own, you know, goals and your own vision. So making sure that you will fit in really well in this culture, in this vibe, in this environment is a really important consideration when you're thinking about your next like college, where you're going to spend 4 years, maybe 5. This is my 5th year, so you never know.
Yeah, stay as long as you can is my recommendation. I loved college. I would echo the same things and emphasize that I chose University of Colorado sort of for the social and the outdoors aspects. I really like to get out in the outdoors. You know, having good academics was a baseline requirement, as in, you know, the schools you're looking at will have good academics. So for me personally, it was sort of, what do I like to do outside of school and my studies? So another thing to consider.
Yeah, if I could kind of go on that with, you know, college being a very, very educational time in everyone's life, obviously. How did you guys find some balance to set aside between educational and kind of recreational time? Because I know engineering is not the easiest field to get into, and it takes a lot of work to really become one in the profession. So how did you guys really balance your time to make sure you had both educational and recreational?
I always, when that question's asked, I always think back to in college, I heard that you can get good grades, have a social life, and sleep, but you can only pick 2 of the 3. So that was something I heard. And I don't think it's necessarily true, but I know I did sleep a lot less in college than I do now, and I don't know how I did it. I honestly cannot think about going back to that little sleep. But I did a lot. I mean, I did both my bachelor's and my master's in 4 years. So I really tried to condense things, and that kept me really busy. But I loved activities. So I was still, like I said, founding the bridge program. That took, you know, a lot of time, and being on Steel Bridge, really involved in the aluminum engineering program, lots of different things. And I don't know, you just get a routine. I think you start to figure out like what you need personally, and when your work time is and when your kind of fun time is. And, you know, you'll have a tough semester. I think everyone does, and it varies when it is for everyone. And that tough semester, you know, you'll remind yourself, okay, 15 weeks, like it's 15 weeks, now it's 14, you know, whatever it is. But that's the nice thing about college too, is it's intense, but it's also like short durations, and then you get a break. So you know, for me, it was classes and, you know, getting work done during the day, and then evenings were clubs and dinner with friends and stuff. And then I would kind of sign back in later as needed, especially when I had a heavy grad school load and doing a lot more in the evenings. But yeah, I mean, I had season tickets for Penn State football, still do, and loved that. So there's a lot of time for fun things too.
Yeah, I would say I'm still learning techniques to to have that balance. And one thing you mentioned, Jen, of just separating, you know, maybe this weekend I'm going to go on this trip, or I'm gonna leave town, go see friends elsewhere, or just kind of separate myself from whether it's the work environment or the school environment. And then that forces you to get things done so that you can go have fun. So it kind of helps you with meeting deadlines and just kind of get your mind away from what you're doing, and then you can come back to it really fresh. And I found that's really helpful. But it's internal, and that's probably the part that I struggle with is forcing myself to, you know, to put it down and set the deadline for myself, stick to it, and then step away, that sort of thing.
I definitely agree that time management is an art that really takes a lot of time to develop. So you will probably need some adaptation to university when you arrive, especially during your first year, because it's completely different than high school. So you will need some time to settle down, to get used to the rhythm of university, which is different. So I would say you need to be organized, as much organized as possible, because that's how you can really get to be on top of everything, because you know exactly which one is the most, which has the highest priority in your list, for example. So you can prioritize school, and then the next thing would be social activities, for example, and also make sure that all the other health, mental health aspects are also at the top of your list. Take some me time, take a lot of breaks, so that you don't feel stressed, because you can feel overwhelmed, especially at the beginning. But always remember that you have a whole support system there for you. You have people to talk to if you need any help. I think that's also very important, because sometimes we think that we're alone and we don't want to talk about everything with other people, but it can help, and it can really help you also get some tips and tricks about different time management skills. But I would say that it's really an art that I haven't managed, but I'm still trying.
All right. Yeah, that was perfect. That's pretty much what I was anticipating. I'm not gonna lie there. So I mean, that's, I can see is kind of scary for a lot of high schoolers to see getting organized, especially in these weird times. You know, you kind of see different organization tools with everything being online, everything switching. So I hope that with this, we kind of see how adaptive we can be. And I hope that kind of high schoolers such as myself can more easily transition, like you kind of said. And to go off here, I have a question. So when you're studying your engineering at universities, I know there's just kind of going to be those things that stick out to you, those activities, those certain little parts of your specific field. Were you, I know some are after university. After university, did you look for a job that really just kind of nailed down those little activities you really loved about your field? Or are jobs kind of looking more for a more broader aspect, I would say?
That's a tough question. Would it be helpful to share how I came about getting my first job and kind of how I got to my company?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Okay. And if I don't answer it in that, let me know. But so for me, I mentioned, I was in structural engineering, knew I wanted to do that, wasn't sure buildings or bridges, did some internships, and I love bridges. I think they're beautiful. I absolutely love pedestrian bridges, of course. They're the best. But I decided for work that I was really interested in buildings and just kind of the built environment in general. And so I started exploring that more and found that working with architects was challenging but fun and something that I liked. And so I, basically started researching, what firms are well known in the building industry and what are the types of projects I'm interested in, what are the cities I'm interested in living in. And pretty quickly, I kind of narrowed in on the Washington, D.C. area. It's only about 2 hours south of where I'm from, so it was a natural fit for me to be close enough to family and have a larger job market. And then I met my company actually at a scholarship dinner, so plug to all the high school seniors to apply for scholarships. Not only is it hugely beneficial to come out of school with less debt and you know, it's little time for a lot of reward, like the scholarship applications. And if you're doing well in school, and if you really do, you know, care about the industry, and you can share that through essays and whatnot, it can pay off huge, and did, not only for financially, but then all the connections I was able to make through different scholarship dinners. And so I actually went to one in Philadelphia, you know, same state that Penn State's in. So I heard about the scholarship through Penn State. Went to the dinner and met our office director for the Thornton Tomasetti Philadelphia office, and was able to shadow there. Really was interested in what we were doing, a lot of tall buildings, stadiums, you know, fun stuff. And so I said, well, you know, I like Philly, but I'd really like to be in DC. And so he connected me with our DC office director, and I was able to get the interview and accept pretty early my senior year. So for me, it was, you know, school set the foundation. So that's where I knew, you know, I like statics, I like strength of materials, I like structural analysis. But then the internships was when I really learned, like, okay, what type of firm do I want to work at? What type of projects? And so I found that those were key to setting me up to be able to pick the ultimate company that I've been enjoying working for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I guess I'll share a little bit about my decision process. It was more, I was thinking about your question, it was a little bit more broad. You know, I had some skills and particular things during my studies that I enjoyed doing. But through internships, I had learned that there's such a breadth, there's such a wide range of activities. Even, you know, if you take civil engineering, for example, then hone down into structural engineering, and then hone down even further. There's just such a breadth. I would encourage staying away from the specifics too much, and having a more broad, you do have to get specific to a point, like what Jen mentioned, like for structures, for example, buildings or bridges is typically how things are separated out. But I would encourage sort of a more broad, where do my interests lie, that sort of perspective.
So I still haven't finished my degree, so I don't really have this experience that Daryn and Jen have about getting your first job. But I would imagine that in your first job, you, as Daryn just mentioned, it's interesting to get started on, like, on a job, that on a position that allows you to test different things in the beginning. So you have different tasks, you have the opportunity to work on different projects with different teams. And along the way, you will of course have some career development and some growth, and it will kind of, like, I guess, help you make your decisions for your future. But here I'm just extrapolating because I haven't experienced it yet.
So for, there's a theme running here, and it's get involved, get involved, get involved, get involved, and get your arms around any opportunity that looks interesting to you, and take advantage of everything that the school puts in front of you. But no one's spoken yet about, you sort of have tangentially, but what, the power of, like, when you're making a college visit, like Vinnie is, what's the power of really being able to connect with faculty members and the, and the assistance that they give you, and should Vinnie be, when he's visiting, looking at faculty involvement maybe with students, or, how did that affect your experience? Because I think, generally it is an engaged faculty that can really get people excited about and know about opportunities. So would you speak to that a little bit maybe?
I think that's a really good question. So In my case, I didn't look at faculty before getting into my university and my program, but once I was there and I was starting to take some classes, I was starting to learn about the different things that the professors were working on. So that's where I got to talk with different faculties to discuss their research and to see if it aligns with what I am interested in, for example, because there are some undergraduate research programs in my university. I think it's pretty widespread as well in other programs. And during the summer, you can work very closely with the professor on a particular research topic. So this is also a really good experience that you can get if you're getting close to the faculty, the different faculties, and trying to understand what they're doing. And I think that's a really big part as well of your learning journey, because you don't want just to get information from class. If you have the experience to be in the lab, for example, to work on a specific research topic, you might discover things that are really interesting and fun that you would like to develop in your future career.
I can jump in. I definitely agree. It's something that when I was visiting, there's a couple faculty around, but most of my visits were during the summer when faculty aren't necessarily in their offices and as accessible. But I think you can learn a lot from that by talking to the students too, because they know, right? The students know if their faculty are engaged, who they're working with. And so I took advantage of a lot of different spend a summer day, Society of Women Engineers stayovers, like ways to get on campus multiple times before I made my decision. And again, I was talking to mostly students, but you can learn a lot from them. And then, yeah, once you get on, it's all about finding those faculty and connecting with them as soon as you can, going to office hours so that they know you specifically. And clubs are a really great way. Our advisor for the Steel Bridge team, he was a great structural engineering professor, and I had a lot of classes with him, after freshman year, but I got to meet him freshman year, and being the only woman on the Steel Bridge team, he definitely knew who I was. So it was great in the first day of class that he knew me already. And then the next step when we wanted to start Engineers in Action Bridge Program at Penn State, it's like, okay, we need faculty support. So we had a great department head, Dr. Peggy Johnson at Penn State, and she was, in full support of getting it started. And then we had awesome faculty who stepped up to be our advisors. Traveling to a foreign country with students for 5+ weeks is a big commitment, and you learn a lot about them and they learn a lot about you. So it's been awesome that we've continued to have rotating faculty who have made that a part of their summer and their entire year, like leading up to it. So for me, the clubs were just as important as the research. But then I found a great advisor and, really enjoyed working with him for my master's thesis work.
And the only thing I think would be worth adding to all of that, because I agree with all of that, would be, approaching faculty with a learning mindset. Again, I'm talking about learning. I think when I'm thinking back to my experience, it's kind of an interesting balance because faculty, they're your professors, they're grading your work, they're, kind of to some degree, judging you and how well you're learning in their courses. And so you want to kind of show them that that you're doing well and that you're learning the material in like a classroom perspective, but outside of the classroom, I think accepting humility and just being humble and talking to the faculty and not trying to, prove yourself or anything anymore. I'm just trying to learn from them, to learn about their research, learn about the different clubs they're involved in, that sort of thing. I think that's the only thing I would add.
When you guys talk about like these clubs you were involved in, do you think for most schools there are similar clubs that are easy to find, or did you kind of have to look for them?
My biggest thing is go to the activity fair. There has to be some type of activity fair, virtual these days, but go. And that's the awesome thing about college is you're surrounded by so many people who are doing similar things to you. And so it's just a great environment to learn as much as you can and all kind of discover it together, which is a lot of fun. But don't wait for people, like no one's gonna come to your dorm room. Well, it's rare that someone will come to your dorm room, like knock on your door and say, hey, we're going to this, you know, Engineers in Action meeting, or we're going to this ASC meeting. So definitely seek it out. And my biggest piece of advice is start broad, like get involved in as much as you can. Depending on what your course load's like the first year, sometimes it's a little bit lighter. Just kind of depends on which classes you have when. But it's great to get exposure. There was clubs I joined that I went to 3 meetings and was like, you know, this really isn't for me, and didn't go back. There's clubs that I was involved in for 2 years and really enjoyed, but then as I took on major leadership roles in other clubs, had to kind of refocus some of my time. But I learned a lot, you know, those 2 years that I was able to be involved. But most of mine was the activity fair, to be honest. I went and I took my time to like look through them all and walk around all the booths, and also talking to friends in the major and looking at the flyers. I mean, that's the other nice thing. If you can get on campus, you know, there's just a plethora of information all around you. So don't be afraid to go to the mechanical engineering building, or, you know, go to the civil engineering building and just look and see like, oh yeah, this club looks fun. I'll just stop by. And, you know, even if you're, you know, the only freshman woman who walks into the Steel Bridge team with all junior and senior men who all know each other, you'd be amazed how inviting they can be, and willing to share their knowledge, and, you know, willing to see the club live on. So never be afraid to jump into something. You'd be amazed the friendships and that you build, and the lessons you learn.
You guys are all very serious. I've not heard free food mentioned anywhere in terms of clubs and activities. This is a very serious panel. That's where all the free stuff is: t-shirts, food, you know, soda, candy. It's all, that's where you go. So I'll just interject that for our more serious and you know, disciplined panel. But so I would love it if, you know, my next task will be to make sure that Vinnie goes somewhere where there's an Engineers in Action bridge team, right? That's our goal now. We have to see that that happens. And if it doesn't, if he's not at a school where there is one, then we're going to have to support him in having this great experience, right? So I think it'd be really great if we just interject here before we go back to, you know, Vinnie's maybe a couple last questions. But, you know, tell us about, you know, a bridge that you worked on that you loved and the experience, and just give us a little flavor for what's awaiting him out in the field.
Yeah, I can jump in. I, at first, throughout most of my college career, was not really interested in, for whatever reason, not really interested in the EIA type of work. But I had a close friend, his name is Mickey Genesi, who was the president of our chapter at the time, kind of get me involved. And it was just sort of like, you know, it's a huge shift in my mindset, my experience, and just the way I viewed the world around me, you know. And it was just, I think him convincing me was really good. So I should have been more open in retrospect. But yeah, I mean, the travel and the service work, it was amazing. Getting a chance to get out of your comfort zone, which you're already doing quite a bit at university. You know, every single year you're growing and out of your comfort zone in some way. But getting involved in the EIA project will push that limit even further, and then you can kind of see for yourself and for your team you know, where that limit is and how you respond. And then also, and just the cross-cultural communication, interacting with a different culture, understanding that we're all human beings, you know, regardless of which language we speak. A lot of times there's a language barrier, but kind of overcoming those things is just, it's so eye-opening, and it does so much for you as a young person developing. Yeah, it's just a few things off the top of my head.
So there was one story that I want to share first, and it's during my interview. Like I said, when I met with the DC office director, you know, I was really excited to work for TT, really excited to work in DC, and you know, I'm in my suit in my interview, you know, being very professional, and they are asking questions, and what I'm talking about is engineers in action. What I'm talking about is how I went about founding the chapter, how we, you know, recruited members, how we fundraised, how we traveled. And really they're interested in the design and then the construction. So I'm talking a lot about that. And I remember when I got my offer letter for my job, my boss, my hiring manager, wrote in the email, he said, "Jen, you had me at, we swam the cables across the river." And that, I mean, this is 100% true. And to this day, he talks about how that stuck out. And why? Because it's a big deal to swim cables across the river. I mean, because those cement bags are heavy, and it's a lot to figure out how you're going to get them moved and how you're going to then mix all of the concrete, which is a whole nother story. So it's a big undertaking. I mean, these projects are not small. They're not, you know, going into a lab at school and, you know, testing some concrete cylinders. It's not that scale. It's not even steel bridge where, you know, we weld a whole bridge and test it. It's totally different order of magnitude. So it really, it changes you, definitely for the better. And it sticks out with, you know, anyone you talk to. For me, I loved when we went to Panama. I went for the first time in summer of 2013 for a survey trip, and my language skills are very poor. It's not something I have. I'm great with numbers. Give me math all day. Words are a different story, especially in a different language. So I was learning as much as I could, thankful to rely on a team and to have the whole team with different people with different skills. And going back and building was just an incredible experience. It was one of the first bridges that we did in the time in Panama. So learning a lot as we went, a lot of lessons learned. And then I've actually had the opportunity to go back to Panama. I worked on a bridge with Bridges to Prosperity through the industry program with TT in 2018. So that was 4 years after we built. And I was able to go back to Comital, see all of the people that, you know, we had worked alongside, and see the progress that happened in the community, which is what amazed me. I should have grabbed it. I have an awesome framed picture that I took 2 years ago. It's downstairs in the living room, and it shows the bridge, you know, a similar view to your virtual background, but then it also shows electrical lines now, which the community had no electricity. I mean, none of that when we were there. And by having the bridge and by having access to be able to go into the local government, they could petition and get electricity out. So it's a totally different quality of life. I mean, now everyone's going to school. They're able to go to university because they can get there and they don't miss days. And so it was just an absolutely amazing experience to be able to go back and see that, and things I didn't expect. You know, I hoped to see the bridge there. I hoped to see that they were maintaining it, but didn't expect electricity, didn't expect all of these students, you know, who were kids working alongside us to now be in university, and just incredible goals that they have. So it's a life-changing experience, and something I would never trade.
It's just a beautiful story, Jen. And I love the fact that you said that you swam with the cables with your team. I was trying to picture this and I was, wow, very impressed. I think that Engineers in Action is kind of creating this family of different individuals with different backgrounds that are all very dedicated to like doing good, to having a positive impact in other people's lives, putting smiles on people's faces and making it safer for them to go to schools, for example, the kids that you can see on this picture. And this is the most fulfilling feeling that you can get as an engineer, I think, because you actually see the impact of your work on people's lives. And it's not just about the technical design and the construction methods and processes. It's about how people are going to feel when they go on the footbridge and it's all bouncy. For example, in Eswatini, we call those bridges tebe tebe because they're all very jumpy and bouncy. So it's very fun. And also how people are going to, women, for example, have access to jobs. And as Jen mentioned, all the development that was possible in the community that are not isolated anymore. It's amazing. And you will feel forever, grateful to have been part of this experience. And as I said, it's a big family. If there's no chapter of EIA at your school, you can create one. Everything's possible. So yes, I hope that you will get involved during your undergrad.
So what do you think, Vinnie? You all ready to go?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. I was thinking as you were talking tonight that I am so proud of what we build at EIA, but I'm equally proud of being in the presence of the people who build it. I'm so proud of the work that we do and the people that do it. And I think that's the thing that makes us really unique in this world of building things and constructing things. And I am so grateful that you all gave up your evening to really, for us to help send Vinnie and other high school seniors off into this great profession, but also to really inspire us all, because you've not only talked a lot about going to college as an engineer, but is about the human aspect and the importance of developing yourself as a human being in this whole process of building. So we build things and we build people, and that's what makes us all worthwhile, I think. So from Engineers in Action, I'll thank all of our viewers for joining us tonight. And again, my deepest thanks to our panel for spending this hour with us. I know I'm happy now. I'm very, very happy. And I hope you all are as well, and that you will join us in the future for additional conversations that we have about our work and the people who do it. So I will wish you all a very good evening and very safe and happy Halloween. So good night, everyone. Thank you.